welcome. I am Hope here at Crafty Hope, and I am starting the 100-day project. Today is day 1 of 100 days. I have decided to do hashtag not precious project, which means to me that I'm going to take some of those things that I have deemed too precious to use, or that I have shied away from using because I was afraid of hurting them or ruining them in some way, and actually use them. So I have come to realize that this comes out of fear. It's a fear of messing up, a fear of just ruining something that I already think is pretty beautiful. And these things are lingering in my stash, and my stash is expansive. So I posted a picture yesterday, I don't know when you're going to see this, but Saturday before the day 1 project, with a bunch of stuff I had gathered just to help me have a smaller selection. I will be adding to that stash as I use things, or as I find things I think, ooh, that would be something I need to put in there. When I posted that, I had at least 2 people say that they thought I should start with these mushrooms. Now, I picked these mushrooms several months ago out in my yard. They were everywhere, and they were just little mushrooms, and I thought, what happens if I pick one and dry it? Well, I kept picking them and drying them. I'll put a video here. Yeah, those are just lingering on paper towels in a corner of my craft room, and I just haven't done anything with them because I was afraid I was gonna mess them up. Y'all, these grow wild in my yard apparently. If they come back, I can get more, you know? I need to use them. So yesterday I did a little bit of research and looked up different ways to preserve them once they are dry like this, to make them last even longer, because they are organic material. They will eventually break down, but you know what? Everything will eventually break down. Eventually. I mean, maybe some plastics won't, but I saw a video. I will try to link it below if I think I liked it. It's kind of old, a couple years, but this creator used both encaustic wax and UV resin, not together, but like to experiment with, to preserve mushrooms, or dried mushrooms. And I'm going to try the same thing. I have both of those things. I'm going to go for it. And then one of the people who suggested using the mushroom also wanted me to use this rusty wrench that was in the photo, and this music paper that was in the photo. I think that's right. I didn't go back and check the Instagram comment. So I've come up with a general idea of something maybe I can do using all 3. Now that could be, I may spread that out over 3 days of things, or I might try to do it all today. The whole idea of my project is to use those things, to work on something every day that uses those things. And whether it's a different thing every day or 100 things that I make, I just need to work on making these less precious. So I'm going to start. I want to try the encaustic wax. It is something I have. I've also made it too precious in my stash. So I'm going to try that method because I think it will be less messy and not as shiny on the mushrooms. So I'm going to start with that. I have the person I watched worked in like a loaf tin, but that seems too big for me and for these. So I've got this little metal tin from the Dollar Tree, where everything I use comes from. So I'm going to use it, I think, put some of my encaustic resin in it, and yeah, see what happens. It's, you know, if I mess it up, it's okay. It's okay. I can get over that fear and go for it. Let's do this. Oh, I should also say that I may not be recording all of these. I may not be sharing everything I do. Do look over on Instagram, where I will be posting every day, hopefully. But yeah, it's going to be difficult to make sure that I share videos every time, because I don't know what I'm going to be doing. So, okay, now let's do it.
All right, guys, let's see. This is the second time I'm trying to record this voiceover. Yesterday's got all glitchy, so I'm hoping today's goes a little bit smoother. And I say yesterday's because I was like done. It's done after I tried to record it. It was glitchy. I was like, we'll come back later. Sometimes you just have to. So I'm sorry that this project and my sharing of it is kind of going on and on. You saw my January, my junk journal January. If you watched any of that, kind of went on and on too. So, I'm taking my time with these things. Well, if you enjoy this or have any questions or whatever, please ask me. So I cleaned off the mushrooms a little bit, got some of the dirt and grass that was still stuck on them from when I picked them. And I put my encaustic medium in that little tin. Now, I have to tell you that after I did this project in this little tin, I did a further look into my stash and realized I had a tuna tin on a melting plate in my craft closet that would have worked just as well for this. And I don't know why I was thinking I had to do this the hard way. So I should always check my stash first. But for now, I heated up that encaustic wax in this little tin until I had a nice little bit of liquid that I could dip that mushroom cap into. I started with the smaller one. And I'm using a couple different sets of tweezers. I've got the ones I'm using to pick up the mushrooms. And then I also have another locking pair that I tried to use with the tin. Now, this larger mushroom, I'll go ahead and tell you, my handling of it, some point in here, the stem of it got very brittle and it ends up breaking. So I don't know what it was I did. And, it was my worst fear that I was going to mess up something, break something, destroy something. And it happened on day one. So I guess that's kind of how it rolls sometimes, and it kind of pushed me forward to be like, okay, go ahead, and yep, you see there, things fell apart. That's where it broke, and I was like, oh no, what do I do? So I'm going to cut out some of my fiddling with that larger one because it ends up not being what I use in this project at all. I am putting them over on a piece of wax paper to keep it from sticking to the actual paper I'm working on top of. Here I am heating over the top of the wax I already applied to get it to drip off any of that excess that was on there. I didn't need it on there. It was cloudy and dark, and all I'm really trying to do is preserve the mushrooms themselves. And I will say this method worked perfectly. It really did harden up the mushrooms, seal them in, make it just exactly what I needed it to be. So there's me doing the bottom of that smaller mushroom, and I'm gonna fiddle with that larger one too. I'm gonna go ahead and apologize also if I do some sniffling and whatever during this video, this voiceover, and get froggy. I apologize. It is spring here in South Alabama and everything is blooming. So, I'm struggling over here. Okay, so I have decided I'm going to put my little assemblages, these gathered precious objects, into a couple of Tim Holtz boxes, and I am going to use some precious papers. These are, the bottom one here is an eco print that I did, and the top one's going to be a rust dye on some music paper. So I measured the inside of these boxes using, you see that ruler over there, wrote those down and went to my guillotine cutter and cut them down to size. So I've kind of decided what orientation everything's going to be. I'm going to use this larger box more horizontally to put the wrench in, and then the smaller box, it's going to be vertically with the mushroom. So you can see, futzing a little bit with how I want to do all of this. And the next thing I do, I did also those Tim Holtz boxes, or I think the older version ones that have the front edges of them were unstained, and so I used some folk art antiquing wax to darken them up to match the rest of the box. Now, with some Liquitex Professionals white gesso in my brayer, I'm getting a tiny bit of that gesso onto the brayer. You can see working onto my underpaper there, and just pushing back a little bit, just the tiniest bit of color on that that music paper, and I'm going to do the exact same thing here on this eco print, and maybe even less so. Now, what I love with this eco print is because I'm doing this so lightly, it's picking up pretty much the veining that was in that grapevine leaf that I used to eco print on there, and it is super cool. So I'm pretty happy that I tried that because it worked out beautifully. And it could have gone completely awry, just like me breaking the mushroom, but it's fine. Everything's okay. So I'm going to futz with these things a little bit more and think about what else I need to add to them, what I feel like they need. I'm trying to remember what exactly. Now, I'm going to tell you, these are not going to be two separate boxes. Well, they are two separate boxes. It's going to be one total assemblage. I wanted to glue them together. So to me, I'm trying to make them a bit more cohesive. So I went away. I think this is the next day. This was a 2-day process for me. So I'm pretty sure I stepped away, thought about it, thought about what these needed, and they needed more texture. So I've pulled in a bit of moss, also from the Dollar Tree, a little bit of a rust-dyed bit of napkin. I'm putting that in both of them, and a watch face from you can see over there on the right, my little drawer of clock part or watch parts and everything. So all of that is going to get brought in to these two pieces that are going to become one. So the first thing I decided to do on this day was to ink up the edges of these papers. That's going to help me I'm using walnut stain distress ink and this ink dauber ink blender. That's what it's called. And that's going to help me bring the brown of those boxes, kind of merge that into the edges of the paper so that it's not such a stark transition. Okay, so, and I'm going to, for the most part, work onto the papers. I'm going to wait to do what I need to do on these papers before I put them in the boxes, because it's a lot harder to work within the boxes and do all the things. So, picking up my desk a little bit, gonna think about what it is I want to do, and I think the next thing I do is I grab my Fabri-Tac and go ahead and glue down this little strip of napkin that's got a little bit of a laced edge to it. This adds a bit more texture to the background of this. And like I said, I'm going to put some more of that lace in the other one, and so it gives some cohesiveness and something that goes through both of these boxes to give them, cohesiveness. All right, so the Fabri-Tac works great. I will tell you, I'm going to use a plethora of different types of adhesives in this. For me, it's always what is the best thing for each thing. So the next thing I decide to do is I think I'm going to break out my E6000 and a toothpick. I think, as I'm looking at everything, trying to decide. And y'all, at one point I even flipped that paper over thinking I might use the other side of it. I think I even added gesso to it. And that probably was the day before when I was struggling and was like, no, we're going to stop here. So here's my E6000 and a toothpick, and I am going to put that E6000 just on the bits of that mushroom that are going to touch the paper. Now, E6000, if you get the clear version, will dry clear. It is a bit shiny, so I try not to let it go too much over. But I have a bad habit somehow of buying the black version of it, which works in some situations, but y'all, I don't know what's wrong with me. I go to buy the E6000 and I mean to get the clear every time, and I keep coming home with black. What is wrong with me? So, alright, so I'm going to start working on that bottom one. And again, the first thing I'm going to do is glue down that bit of rust-dyed napkin with the touch of lace on it. Now, it is great because it brings in more of that rust color in there where I'm going to put the wrench. I did seal that wrench with some Johnson's paste wax. I'm torn on whether or not I should have done that. It did take away a little bit of the rust color, and this lace brought it back in for sure. But yeah, the Johnson's Paste Watch, I loved it because it seals it, but at the same time, I kind of would like that rust to continue. All right, so that watch face I have there had a couple little prongs on it. So I'm using some pliers just to cut those off because I want to make sure that I get a good connection between the little wrench and the watch face. And again, I'm going to use a 6000 and my toothpick. I believe my battery dies here. And so all I did was put a little bit of that E6000 on my watch face and then clip it to the wrench. You can see I'm using some clothespins as a clamp. So once that is dry, yeah, I will pull it apart. So I'm sorry about that. This was, if you've seen some of my other videos, you know that I was having problems with my batteries not lasting very long. I have since got new batteries for my camera. So I just, I'm bad about getting into the zone of making things and not paying attention to what that camera is doing. All right, so I wanted to bring in more, I guess feminine or soft elements to it along with that mossy green color. So I've got some olivey colored embroidery floss on a needle, and I'm going to make some French knots. I love French knots. To me, they look like little flower buds, and so I thought it was kind of a perfect little feminine touch in here. And I think I'm varying the sizes of these French knots. Now, I sped this up quite a bit, but I will try to tell you what to do with a French knot. Pull your thread through, wrap it a couple times between 1 and 3 is usually about what I do, depending on how bulky you want that knot. Then you are going to put your needle back into your substrate slightly off from where you entered it, holding that side that is making the knot. So you want to put it here, I hold that, and I go back through, and that makes your French knot. There are other tutorials you can find online, but that's kind of my thing. Now with this one, I am sticking to doing it where that little bit of fabric napkin is because I'm afraid that it will tear the paper too much. Now I'm about to do, now what am I going to do? So you can see I still have my needle and thread attached there, which is fine. It's great because I knew I was going to utilize the holes in the middle of that watch face and the wrench. So for now, I've put E6000 on the back of my wrench, and I'm going to weigh that down and let it dry. I believe that's what I'm going to do. Yep. Leave it to cure. And in the meantime, I think I'm going to go ahead and glue my two boxes together. I'm going to use some Dollar Tree wood glue. This is, for me and for my purposes, it works fine as a wood glue. There are definitely better wood glues out there. My husband has some out in his workshop. He likes the Loctite 2, I believe it's the blue one. But for my purposes, this works fine. So you can see I just put the wood glue on the bottom of the smaller one, because that's where the connection is going to be. And I'm sorry, I'm a bit off camera. And the smaller one is not as deep as the big one. So there is a little bit of a lip there, and it's fine. So I have put these together, put them down, and I'm using, again, clothespins to clamp them. I should have gone out to the workshop and gotten a real clamp, but it's okay for these purposes. And I'm pressing it a bit just to make sure that connection is there before I leave it all to cure. All right, so I've come back, and my paper wrench part, yep, that is nice and sturdy on there. Now I start to make a French knot in the center of that. You can see I'm about to do it. And then I decide, you know what, this might pull through. This being thread, it might not be big enough to cover that hole. And so I decide to go and grab some green seed beads, because that being solid, I knew for the most part, would probably not pull through the whole of that watch face. So that's what I'm going to go with. The biggest problem I had, you can see, is finding one with a large enough hole that my needle would go through. So, and I had to take a good look at those real quick. And now, yep, go through, and then I'll go back through here. And yeah, so that is the center of my wrench and my watch face is this little bead. And I'm looking at it for a minute, decide if I'm done, if I need any more French knots or anything else, and I decide to go ahead and tie it off. So what I'm about to do is what I would normally do on like an iCAD or something like that. And it's probably the thing I regret the most with this. And that is going to be taking a bit of masking tape and taping down my thread. I totally wish I had not done this. And I will explain. It is because when I go, I'm going to take that wood glue again, put it in the back of my box, spread it out with my glue spreader. Oh, and y'all, this glue spreader is something my husband picked up for me. It's got like a silicone brush on one end and like almost like a little palette knife on the other. And when the glue dries, you can pull the glue out of that silicone brush. It's pretty awesome. I use it all the time, especially with this wood glue. So anyway, I'm going to move that around. The problem is that my paper, where I've put that masking tape, is not actually making a connection to that glue. The masking tape is. So all I have done is created a barrier between my paper and the glue right there where I'm pressing down. And it can come unstuck. Now, fortunately, I know this is stuck down nice because all the corners are stuck down, all the rest of that surface, except for that tiny little portion, that has the masking tape. So it's fine. It just bothers me. I really should have thought that through. So anyway, I pressed that all down, pushed into the corners, got it down, and while it is curing there, I decided to go over to my little mushroom paper, and I'm going to make 3 French knots there, also on that same napkin paper. Now again, this brings cohesiveness and a running theme through the two of these. You've got the napkin with the French knots on there. So we're going to bring these two together in a couple other ways too. But if you can kind of see what I'm going for here, this one is more my natural elements. I've got my moss, I've got my mushroom, and the other one is more like man-made elements. It's a wrench and a watch and that kind of thing, but it has the eco dye backer, whereas the mushroom here has the rust dyed backer to it. So it was just kind of, what I'm going for. I think I ended up having to trim something there, so I ended up inking it back up. Yeah, when I went to put that down, it didn't fit in quite as well as I wanted. So yeah, so I'm gonna, again, I double checked that. I'm gonna put my wood glue in, spread it with my spreader. First, I'm gonna pat that some more to make sure that one's on. You see right there, where that masking tape is, it was making me crazy. So I will weigh that down just to give myself some reassurances. So I'm spreading that out around again. And then I will put my little mushroom paper in. And you can see that I did not put the masking tape on this one that time. I learned my lesson with the other one. And I will utilize the other end of that silicone brush because it has the the palette thing, and it'll help me get in those corners a bit more to press down. I'm doing what I can to press it down without pressing on my little mushroom, because while it is harder and more secure than it was in its original dried state, it's still, I still don't want to break it. All right, so scraping off any extra glue, and I've left that to cure for just a little bit. So I will use the E6000 to stick my moss down. I could have used any number. Tacky glue would have been fine, anything, but I do love my E6000. So I've got this little chunk of moss I'm going to put there, and it doesn't quite cover the base of that mushroom the way I want it to. And that was kind of the main purpose of this moss, was to cover the base of the mushroom and to give it a feeling of being actually planted in something. So I'm gonna build up, use my E6000 to build up that moss to the level that I want. And in my head, I'm starting to come to the end of this, and based on the time you see here, I kind of am, but I'm gonna get bothered in a bit that the bottom and the top aren't feeling quite as cohesive as I want them to. I don't know. It's the more I look at this, the more meaning I get from this. And now I did place that napkin on the bottom one, so it looks like the moss color is coming down from that top one. And yeah, but I don't know that it comes through. I could have added a few more French knots. Okay, so here's where I was like, I need something else in the bottom, and I decided I needed more moss, but I couldn't just put moss there. I needed another element, and I needed something that felt both man-made but fragile and like a little bit of shine to it. And what I decided on was a little light bulb. So I'm using another adhesive. I'm using hot glue. So I put a dollop of it on the bottom of the box. I'm sorry I can't work where y'all can see it this way, but I stuck that light bulb in there. Hot glue to me seemed the best thing for it because it would dry quickly and hold that light bulb so it sat up without me having to like prop it up in some way. So it was still a little wobbly, so I'm adding little bits of hot glue, making sure I pull off any of those strings that you get with the hot glue. And securing that light bulb in there so that it's not wobbly and weird, and so that's sitting straight up. Once it is in there nicely, I'm going to use more of that moss, and I believe the E6000, I might use the hot glue. I think I'm going to use the E6000 because it's what I used in the top one. And I'm going to place it around that light bulb. I kind of want to cover up the base, that like silvery base of the light bulb. But then that helps give it, again, that more organic and natural feel, even though there's all of these man-made elements in there. So I will spend a little bit of time putting that in there, and yeah. I'll let y'all watch that while I go ahead and tell y'all, if y'all liked this video, make sure you give me a thumbs up and please subscribe. I'm going to share as much of these 100-day projects as I can with you. The next project I work on is an Altered Kids board book. If you've seen it on Instagram, you know it took me many days to do that project, and so it will take me many videos to get through it. But if you have questions or specific things you want to see in any of these, I would love to hear from you and know what that is. All right, guys. What have you joined the 100-day project? Are you doing something? Let me know. I would love to go follow you, because I may not, I follow as many people as I can on Instagram, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. Yeah, so I am just about done with this. I'm gonna let y'all have a few looks at it, and I will see y'all later with more 100 days and art journaling and jewelry and thrifty hauls and all those fun things. Thanks so much for coming by and watching. I really appreciate it. Bye.